guys, it's Lara. Thank you so much for watching and welcome back to my channel. So when I published the video in which I have explained what my plans for this channel were, I have told you also that I would like to talk about depressions and anxiety in future, which is something I have dealt with for years. And today I thought that would be a good day to sit down and talk to you. I'm still in Minnesota. My husband and my son just went training and I'm alone in our Airbnb, and I've been feeling actually pretty down lately. It has several reasons which I do not want to go into right now, but I've been a little bit depressed lately, and today it totally hit me. I was sitting on the terrace crying basically for no reason. I was just feeling down and depressed and I couldn't really explain why is that. And then I thought, no, I really should sit down and talk to you guys about where those things come from, because I know that I'm not the only one who is struggling with this. And I know how incredibly important it is to know that there are more people who are suffering from depression and anxiety attacks. And that's why I decided to sit down to make the best of this mood that I'm currently in and to talk to you. So I'm gonna go back to my childhood. I actually started being depressed even as a kid, but back then I've been growing up in Eastern Europe in a very different political system, and something like depression and anxiety were taboo. You were a freak if you had some mental problems. So first of all, as a kid, I didn't understand what was happening with me, and second, even if I would have understood, it wouldn't have been a good thing to talk about in public. I strongly believe that one of the reasons why I am being depressed so often is because my mom was not in a really good mental health state when she was pregnant with me. So to understand that, I have to talk a little bit about my family. So my mom had 2 kids before I was born. She had a son and a daughter, but the son was diagnosed with brain tumor when he was 10, and within a year he died. And the doctors back then told my mom that in order to deal with this pain, it would be the best to get pregnant as fast as possible, which I believe is absolutely wrong. I think it would have been better if they would give her a chance to deal with her pain first before she would become pregnant again. But when I calculated back when my brother died, I think she was already pregnant with me before he died. And of course she was suffering, because losing a child is a horrible thing, especially after you watch helplessly for a year how your kid is slowly dying and you can't help it. So my mom was very sad when she was pregnant. She was super depressed, and I really believe that that also played a part in my mental health state. I might be wrong, but I think that this is where the roots of my depressions come from. So as a kid, very many kids were so careless and happy. I was partially very careless and happy, but there were situations in my life when I was a kid when others felt happy and excited about some upcoming events, and I was the one who felt scared of those things for no reason. I kind of knew there is nothing to be scared about, but some things just made me anxious and some things made me depressed, and I was suffering already back then. And as I said, I didn't even know what it was, and even if I knew, I wouldn't have been able to talk about that because it was a huge social taboo. So you can probably imagine that being a teenager with all those hormones and having some mental issues was not really the best time of my life. However, I have to say, at least as a teenager, I started developing some kind of self-confidence, and I had some great friends who also helped me to think positive and to believe in myself. It didn't always work. I had really some dark episodes, but I have to say I have never felt suicidal, at least. I always only just felt down, and when I had a phase like that, it took a while and it was really hard to get out of it, but I managed to do that. And I think for me the most important step was to get out of the country where I was living. I always wanted to go abroad because I never felt at home. I think partially because of my heritage. I have a very controversial heritage for the times when I was growing up. So part of my family comes from Germany and part of my family comes from Russia. So the country where I grew up was attacked by Germans in the Second World War, and then after '68 they were controlled by Russians. So you can imagine in any time it was not politically great for me to tell where I actually come from. So I was really keeping it quiet and I never really talked about my heritage, and I always felt like I have to get out somewhere else. And before I even turned 20, I think I was like 18, I moved out to Austria, which wasn't always easy, but I have to say that's the country where for the first time I really felt at home, and I love it there. I love living in Austria, and this is my home, my heart is there, and this is like a place where I can imagine to grow old. So that also helped because I got out of a system and of a society where I never felt at home. I don't say that the country where I grew up is bad, but it just wasn't good for me, for the things that I needed. So this is of course very personal. So when I got out, I could kind of start new with everything, and a whole new world opened to me, and I met some great people, and I also met some people who helped me to think more positively, especially my husband. Actually, Jack is awesome. He's someone who grew up with people telling him you can be anyone and anything you want to, and he started teaching me that. And I think if it weren't for him, I wouldn't be as confident today as I am nowadays. Maybe I would, but it would have taken me a little bit longer. And he was definitely a person who would support me all the time, who still supports me all the time, and I love him for that. I'm so grateful that we met, and I'm so grateful that he's in my life. Anyway, my today's depression. It got better over years. I had some episodes, but there were times when I was feeling absolutely fine, but then some traumatizing things happened in my life and it threw me back, and I never really dealt regularly with some of those things that traumatized me properly. So after all those years it kind of accumulated, and then something triggered, you know, all those depressions, and I went into really deep depressions. And I think the worst episodes were in 2012. Back then we were working on a project where I was actually responsible for the entire project, and I was super stressed. And I've been organizing a huge event, and I was kind of alone for many things, so I was working insane hours. And I always had the thing for when I do something, I feel like asking for help is a weakness, which is of course bullshit. Asking for help is necessary, but back then I couldn't do that. So I was trying to do everything I could alone, and at some point I was so burnt out that I actually literally collapsed. And I was so burnt out that I wasn't functioning properly, and that was when I understood you have to deal with your issues. So I started taking therapy. So I found a lady who does therapy, and she also does hypnosis, and she teaches you how you can help yourself alone so that you're not dependent on her, because she said hypnosis is a great thing, but what you want to do is you want to learn how to deal with anxiety attacks and with depression on your own when I'm not there. And also at the time my anxiety attacks were horrible. I would sit and I would feel like, I think this is how probably heart attack feels, I would feel like I have no air. Everything felt like there's a lot of pressure in my chest, and I was cramping, feeling dizzy, and I was not able to breathe properly. This is how anxiety attacks feel for me, and that's why also I went to therapy. So just to sum it up, because I'm afraid that all those things that I just said were a little bit all over the place. So I was already depressed as a kid. I didn't understand what was happening with me, and there were a few traumatic experiences in my life that influenced also my further mental development and didn't make it necessarily better. And at some point when I was an adult and when I was dealing with a lot of stress, it kind of hit me at a moment when I would expect it the least. And at some point I had to understand that I have to deal with my mental problems. I think the biggest step for me was to understand that being depressed is not a weakness, and that it is nothing you have to be ashamed for, because these were my thoughts when I would think about how I feel depressed and that I am depressed. The fact that I'm depressed, I felt like this is a weakness and I should not talk about it. But once I understood you actually should talk about it, and it's not a weakness, because there are many people in the world who are really powerful and strong people and yet they feel depressed. It's not because they're weak, it's very often because they take too much on them. And once I understood that, that was a huge step forward for me. The next thing that helped me was to understand panic attacks. So when I had those anxiety attacks, they made me actually even more afraid, because they feel like you are afraid, you experience fear, and that made me even more afraid. But my therapist explained to me that they are actually a signal from your body and from your mind that something is just too much, and it's kind of stop. You need to stop going on the way you're going. You need to sit down and rethink the way of how you're living, and that's the signal they're giving you. So this is what she explained to me. I'm not saying that this theory is right. Maybe it was just something I needed to hear, but it worked. So I'm just gonna go with that. So anyway, she always made me sit in therapy sessions when I came there and had my anxiety attacks, and she always said, where do you feel it? So when I had my anxiety attacks, I would always feel it here on the top of my gut, and she would always ask me to lean back in the chair and to describe what I feel, and if it had a color, what color would it have. So mostly my anxiety attacks were a yellowish green, a really vibrant color, but also for me a little bit of an aggressive color. And she would always ask me to breathe deeply in and out, and to try to imagine to breathe especially in the place where I felt the anxiety attack. And then the color changed, and once I kind of started releasing the stress, the color turned into a beautiful bluish violet color, like purple blue, and it started feeling warm, and then I got better. So at the time when I was so burnt out and so depressed that even opening 10 letters in front of me felt overwhelming, I went to my therapist on a regular basis. I would go at least twice a week for a while. After a while I went there only once a week, and then like twice a month, and after over a year it was enough to go there just a couple of times a year, depending on how I felt and what happened. There were some things that happened the years after that that made me feel really depressed, and these were the times when I had to go there again. But I haven't been to therapy in over a year, which is apparently a good thing, because I feel like I learned how to deal with those situations on my own. So when I have a meltdown, just like I had today, when I just start crying for no reason, the first thing I do is I allow myself to feel sad and depressed. I just cry all the emotion out, no matter how ridiculous it sounds. I just cry. Also, I like being alone, which is of course different for anyone. So I'm a person, I do not want to be hugged. I don't want to hear you're gonna be fine. I just want to be alone. I want to bawl my eyes out for 10 minutes so that the emotion gets out. And then I always start thinking about what might be the reason for me feeling so down. So I'm trying to reflect on my life. I'm trying to find out, is there a project that stresses me out, because I have a little bit of an obsessive mind. So when I'm doing things, I'm taking it to the next level. When you working so hard on things that you barely shut your thoughts down, which is sometimes really hard, because when I'm trying to fall asleep I still kind of work in my brain, and that's not a healthy thing to do. So I'm always trying to find out, am I obsessing with something again? And if I am, then I try to take conscious breaks from things. I try to manage everything a little bit better, even time-wise. So if I'm working on something, that I'm trying to make a better time management so that there are breaks in between, that I can also take my me time, because that's something that's super important to me personally. I found out that when I just work and do things for others, I feel very quickly kind of used up, you know, like drained. That's probably the better word. Like I feel like all my energy has been sucked out of me. So I really work out on a regular basis. So I do yoga, I go to pole dance classes, I take ballet classes. So this is super important for me to do it regularly. I am a very creative person. I love DIYing stuff. I also have a DIY channel, which I will link down below. So when you visit my channel, you will see I do a lot. I upload mostly once a week whenever possible. So this is also something that helps me to relax and to take my mind off things. It's really fun for me. That's why I actually wanted to have the DIY channel, because it's also a motivation to do it on a regular basis. I also tried to find out if there were some outer influence from someone else, or is there any big cloud of negativity around me. So are there some people that make me feel depressed, or is there something going on somewhere that I can't influence, or maybe I can influence? So I always try to find out what the reason might be, and then I'm trying to find a solution, and that actually helps. So today when I had the meltdown, I still didn't find out exactly the reason, but I think I know what it is. I'm not gonna talk about it right now, but it was just in general I felt drained because I was obsessing a little bit too much with things, and they were not going the way I wanted to, and it just made me sad. And then I felt down, I felt depressed, and today kind of all of the emotions came out, and I cried for a few minutes, and then I decided I'm gonna talk to you guys, and that actually helped too, because I could kind of form the thoughts and the feelings that I had into words, and I also felt like I'm doing the best I can of the situations I'm currently in, because I feel depressed, and I felt like, okay, when I feel depressed I should talk about it because that might help people, and that put a whole new sense into this, and that helped you. So might probably sound weird, but it worked today, and I feel so much better after I talked to you guys about it. So if you are feeling depressed, if you're having anxiety issues or any kind of mental issues, I would definitely recommend reaching out to someone. That might be your family, your friends, your colleagues, teachers, or whomever. If you feel like those people would be too close, or you are not sure if you could trust them, you might want to Google if there is some kind of a helpline in your area. If you can afford it, I would definitely go to a therapist. This is definitely a good thing to do. But if you are on a budget, you might want to see if there are some other YouTubers on Google talking about their mental issues, because sometimes it really helps a lot to know you're not alone. And that's what also helped me. I was in a lucky position to be able to afford a therapist, but if I wouldn't be able to do that, I would probably just watch another videos, and I would probably also try to find other people in my area I could talk to. So that's something I would recommend. I'm of course no expert, but this is based on my personal experience. That's all I wanted to talk about for today. I realized that this hasn't been the most cheerful video I have ever filmed, but I feel like it's really important to talk about these issues. So if you want to share your story with us, you are very welcome to do so in the comment section, but please respect that this is an English-speaking community. I would kindly ask you to do so in English, because when I created this channel, I wanted it to be a place where we can help each other, and it's really hard if we do not share a common language. And since I'm already talking in English in these videos, I think it's only fair if we all stick to English in the comments. And you might be surprised in future how helpful the comment section might be for all of us if we share just one language. So that's it for today. If you liked today's video, if you found it helpful, don't forget to give the video a thumb up, and you can also share it with anyone who you think might also find it helpful. Don't forget to subscribe to my channel if you didn't yet. Just hit the red button down below, and you can also visit me on Instagram. I have listed all of my Instagram accounts down below. I have listed there also several similar videos I have filmed on this channel so far, and thank you guys so much for watching. It was a wonderful thing to talk to you about these things. I love you so much, and I'm looking forward to see you with my next video. Bye!